guy on screen, and he was like talking like this, and he'd call you a maggot if you did something wrong in the game. This episode is sponsored by Druid City Games.
It's time for the Sultan Sass podcast when we share our love for the wonderful world of board games with you, whether you are a gaming veteran or just starting your tabletop journey. Welcome to episode 17. I'm Suzanne.
And I'm Mandi.
Welcome back, everybody. Mandy, how you feeling? I know you just got back from a huge epic gaming journey, gaming trip.
Yes, it was so much fun. I'm exhausted, but it
I
was
bet.
well worth the exhaustion, if that makes sense. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
playing games with a bunch of awesome people sounds like a worthwhile time to me.
There were so many games, and some of the games, unfortunately, I'm gonna be that person, that goes on, like, Facebook or something and goes, "I had a great day today. Tee hee." And then you're like, "And
The
then?"
vague booking. Yeah.
Exactly, the vague
Well, Mandy,
booking.
where were you? Tell everybody where you were.
Yes. So I was at the Gathering of Friends, and this is not a major convention that people just come to. It's usually one where you're invited to come, and it's a fairly small group of people that just get together and play games. There are some designers there that kind of show off some of their new designs, or just some people just say, "Hey, I just want to play some game with friends," and that's what we do. But there were a few games there that were new and coming out at either Essen, a lot of games coming out of Gen Con. There's one that I played 3 times. It is a big game. I don't even know how much I can say about it, like, who's doing it, so I'm just gonna leave it there.
Oh,
There's
such a tease.
I know, I'm sorry, but it's crunchy, but, like, good. The iconography is great, like, it has a good flow. It's awesome. So, I will point it out when I'm able to talk about it a little bit more, but it was very, very
Okay.
good. But I did try a few other ones. Richard Brees has a game coming out, called I wrote it down here. Okay, well, I did write it down, and I
Key
erased
Dragon.
it. The Glade.
Key Dragon.
So, no, the Glade is the one.
Oh,
Yes, so that one is fun, and that's coming out. Got to play that. So once I can talk about things a little bit more, we'll talk about that. But I know that he's, I
excellent.
think, launching that potentially at Essen or Gen Con. So there were a few others, but you get the idea. It's just some really, really great games. And I don't know how much I could talk about it, but a shout out to Candace from BGG. And those who might know, I recorded a podcast with Candace not that long ago. Also has done a game, and again, I don't know to how much I can talk about it, but it was very good, and I definitely hope that we see more of it in the future.
That's excellent. Candace is a very cool
Oh,
person.
Candace is awesome.
Well, good. I'm glad you had a good time, but
Yeah.
as much fun as it was, I'm sure you're exhausted. But I'm looking forward to hearing. Hopefully, you got a lot of good games in, and we'll hear about them over the next podcasts over time.
Absolutely, yes. What about you, Suzanne? What have you been doing to keep busy? Some video games, perhaps, or maybe some more board games? I don't know. What have you been doing?
Just, this same old trying to prep for Gamma. So, if you
Yes.
are watching or listening to this, uh, the day the episode drops, the Gamma trade show is going on. This is a trade show in Reno that's board game or tabletop game industry oriented. It's not a convention, it's really an industry thing where
Right.
publishers and retailers meet and gather and do seminars and look at products and things like that. There will be some media folks there, etc. And so doing some prep work for Gamma with restoration games and getting that all set up. So it's been a little busy for that, but I have been playing Wild Frost. I mentioned it on the last
Yes.
episode. This is a little deck builder. It's interesting. Like I was really into it, and now I'm downshifting just a little bit because of
Okay.
some of the randomness that you
Mm,
hit there. Where um, I love so many of the mechanisms, and I love a lot of the things about, like, you add these little charms to cards to improve an individual card.
right.
You get new champions. I like all the lane management. All of that stuff is still good. Where it's starting to, I start to feel a little itchy around is there are times when you don't know what kind of enemies you're going up against. So,
Right.
for example, I built a deck all about doing return damage, right?
Okay.
So it had a slower timer, and it hit big once it got hit. So I could take these little piddly hits from the enemies and then I would just wallop them back. And it was a
Yeah.
really fun concept, and I really managed to craft a really great deck around it. And then I hit an enemy that was a poison dealer. The
Oh,
problem with the poison dealers is that they don't technically hit you, so I never got to do any return damage,
right. Got it.
and there was literally nothing I could do about it, right? You're just sitting there
Like,
taking the damage, waiting for your timers, and it felt and a couple of scenarios like that have come up, and that was a little bit of a feel bad, and that's kind of a game that stood out that kind of encapsulates the randomness
right,
that
right.
is maybe a half step too far for me. But I'm still playing it.
Okay.
There are a lot of great things about the game, but I definitely like from a couple of weeks ago when I was really high on it to now, I've definitely cooled just a little bit. But I have unlocked more, and the third faction is a lot of fun, and I've just started to delve into that. So I'll report back more later.
Yeah, because I haven't really had a chance to play it because I've been too busy playing Raft. So
Oh yeah, yeah.
Raft is a game on Steam, and it literally is, as the name suggests, you are on a raft and you're trying to survive on this raft, but you want to build up your raft and you have objectives throughout the game. You come to different islands, you want to try and find resources, and it'll lead you to a clue to get the next thing, that you're supposed to do for your objectives. It's pretty straightforward. However, let me tell you about Bruce. Bruce is the lovely shark that is in the waters that tries to bite pieces off of your raft. So you have to like spear him away from your raft before it goes, eats all of it. And if you, heaven forbid, jump in the water near Bruce, Bruce will try and eat you. So you're
That
trying
darn
to,
Bruce.
yeah. So, Bruce can be a bit of a, troublemaker, but the game itself is quite fun. Bruce and all. So Raft on Steam, I've been really enjoying. I actually find it kind of relaxing, oddly enough. Um, yeah. So my brother, I bought a hand. I don't know what you would call it. And for those who are watching it on the video here, I got a handheld kind of keyboard that I can use. So it's like a separate part of the keyboard, so I can use when I'm playing PC games, and it comes with like a little rest that attaches at the bottom. And I don't play a ton on PC, but when I do, I find my nails get in the way of the keys. So I'm like, I mean to run, I'm like, oops, I've just jumped in the water or whatever. So I find this a lot easier for me to maneuver on that hand. So I bought one for my brother as well because like that's so cool because he is mostly
Aw, what a
more.
nice sister you are.
Yeah, well, he's more of a PC gamer. He plays all the things, but more PC. So he said he's loving it. So in return, he bought me this game called Project Zomboid.
Ooh.
Yeah, so I don't know I don't know a ton about this game. I mean, I'm not mad about the zombies, and then I kinda took a look at it and I'm like, "Oh, survival." I'm not a huge fan. Even though Raft is kind of a survival game, I'm not really a huge fan of survival game, but then it started talking about RPG. So, they describe it as an ultimate zombie survival, but you can play it in a group. So you can play it solo or with a group. You loot, build, craft, fight, farm, and fish in a struggle to survive. And so it's a sandbox game which you can kind of customize. And this is my favorite. So how will you die? All it takes is a bite. So I love it how it's like zombie and survival, and all of a sudden, but I think I'll just go fishing while the zombies are deciding to attack me. So Project Zomboid, I'm gonna get back to you on that one, but that's one my brother has hoped after our Elden Ring journey has ended, we can start that with Slivers, perhaps, if he's going to join us. We shall see. Because I'm thinking Suzanne's a no on this one.
Big no, big pass for me, but thanks, thanks.
That's what I thought. And then lastly, I haven't played it yet, but I know some people really enjoyed when I talked about the game Coffee Talk. I don't know why I want to say it like Coffee Talk. I had Saturday night,
Because we're
so
old, Mandy,
I
that's why.
know. Ugh, so Coffee Talk, they've come out with episode 2. I'm pretty sure it's on Game Pass, but it is on Xbox and PC. Again, I'm not sure if it's on PlayStation or the Switch, but I definitely know it's on both of those platforms. So if you want to try Coffee Talk episode 2, that has dropped recently. So that's it for now, but I'm sure I'll be back with more games, more video games specifically.
Fair enough. Well, I know we have some tabletop games to talk about too that are on the crowdfunding circuit right
Hmm.
now. So, Mandy,
Yeah.
what's your pick for this week?
So for this week, I opted for not a game. I mean, there are lots of really cool games on crowdfunding, but I don't know. I'm really into journals these days, and maybe because I've been playing a lot of solo RPGs. I know you play them too, Suze, but I was looking at quest journals for game masters and players, and this is put on crowdfunding, so Kickstarter specifically, by Roll and Play Press, and this is where you can document things for your character, your worlds, your adventuring, and they're kind of like a book binder, which is really cool, like a notebook binder sort of situation. They're specifically for well, I shouldn't say specifically, but they're for 5e, Pathfinder, and more. So you're not specific to a certain system. And it ends Thursday, May 18th, 2023. Retails for about $27 Canadian, but I think the Kickstarter's in, please correct me if I'm wrong, pound sterling. It's about $16. Sorry, 16 pounds sterling. My God, I'm saying
Yeah,
dollars.
yeah.
So 27
Big
Canadian,
difference.
16 pounds sterling. There's a difference there. So I thought I'd show that off because I find I'm always, anytime I do solo RPGs or any RPGs in general, I always find it hard to find like that really good notebook that's laid out in a way that I have room to write. You know what I mean? Sometimes you're squeezing into these really small boxes. I'm like, I write fairly large. So for me, I like the room, the extra pages. I like the structured kind of notebook binder. And I've purchased things from them before, and they've actually sent me books before on like building a character, or maybe if you're running your first RPG, give you ideas on how to do that. And it's kind of like a, easy set kind of what am I looking for? Ideas or character names, traits, whatever that you can use. And it was amazing. I really like the way they set that up. So I'm really enjoying the way they kind of set up these journals slash notebooks for RPGs. So Quest journals for game masters and players finishes May 18th. I think it's pretty cool. And I think a lot of people would enjoy the way that it's structured and use it in their RPGs.
All right. Well, I do have a game, and it is a repeat in a way, because Tim Fowers is kickstarting the 10th anniversary edition
Mm.
of Paperback.
Love this game so much.
Which, honestly, the idea that it's been 10 years since Paperback released is just
Wild.
my brain really struggles to comprehend that it's been 10 years, but here it is. I'm, in general, a fan of Fowers games and love Paperback, just like you said, or
Yeah.
hardback and things like that. So this ends May 4th. It's on Kickstarter,
Hmm.
and there are a couple options here. So you can get the 10th anniversary edition, and one of the cool things that Tim has added is that he has artists that are well known in the board game industry doing
Right.
special book cover cards for the game. So, like Kwanchai Moria and Vincent Dutray are included, and there's a whole bunch of really cool artists that are doing special cover
Mhm.
cards for the game. So
Oh,
that's a fun way to
nice.
celebrate the 10th anniversary edition. So you can get that. Now, of course, there is though the super deluxe edition that you can get
Oh, do I need
for,
this?
I think it's $68 plus shipping. But it's got like double-sided boards with little notches to hold. Oh my gosh, it looks gorgeous, and it's in a bigger box, which I'll be honest is pretty appealing to me because the paperback boxes are these narrow, slim
Yeah, that's true.
boxes that can get a little cramped depending on if you sleeve or anything like that. But so there's deluxe edition. But honestly, the thing that I am most excited about in this is that Tim is introducing a new game called Typewriter
Yes.
that is in the paperback family, but it's more portable because it uses little resin or plastic tiles that look like typewriter keys,
Nice.
and it's a word game again,
Yeah.
right? And it's got like tiles with special abilities, and you're moving tiles around to form words and things like that. It looks fantastic, and that's for $29. So you can check out the campaign on Kickstarter through May 4th. You can back for the 10th anniversary, the deluxe edition, or typewriter, or mix and match, whatever editions that you want in there. And if you like word games, it's a no-brainer to check it out. If you don't like word games, you still might want to check it out because that's always been one of the fun things about games like paperback or
Right.
hardback is it kind of takes the formula and gamifies it with an additional level that I think
Yeah.
kind of helps even the playing field if you're not super into word games like like a direct Scrabble thing. So
Right.
worth a look there.
Yeah. I'm do I need another paperback? No. But my mom loves it. Mine is looking a little threadbare because we just play it so often. And then
Yeah.
typewriter, new game. I love Scrabble. I'm not saying this is Scrabble, but I like any kind of game with, words and tiles. I'm here for it. So paperback, we might be going and checking that out. Ah, shucks.
There you go. Gotcha. Gotcha.
Ah.
Hooked ya. Alrighty. Well, that's enough for video games, crowdfunding. Let's get to Mandy, you've been playing so many games. Let's start talking about the games you've been playing.
Yes, definitely. All right. Sue said I had all all the games played, and there were so many, I had to narrow it down, but I just didn't want to forget. You know, when you play them, like, I think I played these games so many times at the gathering of friends that I was at, and I was like, if I don't do this now, I'm going to play a whole bunch of other games and just forget what I want to talk about. So let's jump right into it. So the first one I'm going to talk about came to my house just before I left. And I was like, you know what? Let me throw it in the bag and see if I can get it played. Box is super pretty. So it's called Pollen. And this is designed by Rainer Knizia and art is by Beth Sobel. I didn't know that until took a little peek on the box and stuff. And it's published by All Play. It's for 2 to 4 players, and it plays in about 30 to 45 minutes. And I think, Suzanne, you had an opportunity to try this one as well?
Yep,
Good.
I've played it as well.
Perfect. So you can jump in as well. So first things first, when we open the box, you're like, oh my goodness. The box itself, very pretty, lots of flowers. Then you open it and you see these really cute wooden tokens, and they have like a scarab, they have a bee, they have a butterfly, and I think it was just those 3 if I'm not mistaken. And they have some kind of like
Yeah.
screening or something on them, so that makes them like a little shiny. It's almost like a
Yeah, the
foil.
meeples are gorgeous.
Yeah, like it's wild. I was like, oh my gosh. So you're like, okay, man, to get to the point. Those are important. So you just put those in little piles to the side of the board, and then everyone's going to get their own hand of cards. And the cards are, I don't know the sizing, but they're square, but they're like a slightly bigger square card. And they have like kind of notches at the corners, kind of like, how would I say that? Like a concave circle, like an arc, like a
Yeah,
crescent.
they just have the corners cut out, yeah.
Yeah, it kind of looks like a
So
crescent
that if
shape.
you put 4 cards together, like, side by side, you get a little circle in the
Right.
middle. Yeah.
Exactly. And the reason why that is because you have a bag of tiles, and these tiles will have a combination of things on them. So it might have the beetle and the bee, or it might just be a beetle, or it could have a butterfly, bee, beetle. It's all kinds of combinations, but you don't know what it is until it gets pulled out. So what's going to happen is everybody gets a hand of cards, and on these cards, they're going to have the corners kind of cut out like we talked about. Also, it's going to have symbols on the card. So you'll have, a card that has 2 B symbols, or a card that has 3 B symbols, or 4 butterflies. And you have some that have stars, which act as wild. And you're like, Mandi, get to the point. What do we do with these cards? You're going to put them on the little round tiles I was telling you about. These go in a bag. And those, when someone pulls them out, so whoever's working that out, pulls that out and say, okay, this is the tile that's going to go out. And now what you want to do is place your cards around it, because you'd like to have the majority. And who has the majority, once it's been closed off, is going to win the tokens that are associated with that tile. So if it was just a scarab beetle, and maybe I only had cards that amounted to 2, and Suzanne had cards that amounted to 4, and someone else had 1 to 1, great. Suzanne is going to take the token for that beetle. The whole point to win the game is to try and get the most of specific tokens. You want to be the one that has the most. I found the scoring a little weird here, so bear with me on that one. But yeah, you're going to play through. I think you play through until, this is where I always forget the end here.
It's so you play through until, a certain amount of the tokens are all gone,
Thank you.
or
That's it.
until your cards are all played out?
That's it. Again, I think, and I should remember this because in the games I played, all of those scenarios happened.
That's great, yeah.
So, my gosh, I don't know why. Yeah. See, this is how many games I played that I forgot how it ended. I wasn't crazy about the way it ended. I found it a little confusing, but we'll get to that in a second. But yeah, so, and what was really cool is sometimes you'd place cards out and then would open up another area. So if you had a card and like another player had a card together, and it created that kind of like semicircle, you could put a token there. But if your cards did that, no token for you. So they were trying to make it a little tricky. So there definitely was some back and forth. Star cards were like the best of your friends, but the worst for other players, because they could be anything. So if you had 2 symbols on a token, they could be both of those symbols. So anyway, just saying. But it was a fairly straightforward game. I really enjoyed the art of the game. I liked the gameplay, but I had some people come back and say they weren't too crazy about it. And the ending was a bit weird. So Suzanne was saying about certain tokens and cards running out. This is where it gets a bit tricky. You want to look at whoever has the most of a, I was gonna say insect, in a category, and you could get booted out like of the game. Like if you're like, oh no, you don't meet this requirement, you're gone. So it came down to, in our game, I think I was playing against Robert, another friend in the industry, and he ended up beating me on one of the categories because he had 1 more than I did. Literally 1 more. We were tied on 1, and then he beat me in the other one. But apparently
Them's the breaks, kid.
What happened in
Get
your game,
good,
Suzanne?
Mandy.
Yeah, well, apparently I wasn't good enough. So, what happened in your game? Did that happen for you? Did anyone get kicked out like early? Because if you
Not
know when someone
kicked out,
can't
but
win something, they don't like they just don't score.
so I've only this isn't on my review list yet because I've
Right.
only played it once. And
Okay.
what I found in my play was it started off when we started playing, we're like, okay, it's fine. It's a fine game.
Sure.
But as we got deeper and deeper into the game, it got more and more tense in a
Yes.
really positive way. And we really enjoyed that. Now, after again, one play, but to be fair, I play a lot of games. I didn't mind the scoring. It's a very Knizia scoring, right? It's like, oh, you have to like kind of climb all three. You want to get all three bugs going or hyper focus on two so that you can just nail that win.
Right.
But if you get stuck low on two, you're going to lose. And you just have to pay attention to that. Um, what we also found is that like the tiles that come out, that's random completely, but
Sure.
so important. So for example, we had a ton of the two bug tiles come out
Oh.
in the first
A little
like
bit, yeah.
half of the game. And then in the second half, you started getting these single ones. But because of the way the other tiles that you committed cards in places, and then all of a sudden a bee comes out, and you're like, oh, well, crud, all my bees are gone or whatever, and things like that. And I think that we made choices that we would have made differently with
Sure.
experience under our belts, how we use those wild cards you mentioned, and the value of like, on your own personal cards, if you have four of a certain type of insect versus one, and how you do that. There's also the element of you don't get to score something unless at least two players are around a token. And that is a big deal. And
Oh,
being
yeah.
strategic about that adds a lot of interesting decision points, we felt. So, personally, after one play, I really liked it. I was warm on it in the beginning, but as it picked up, I got much, much warmer. The scoring personally didn't bother me. And I think there's some interesting spaces there to work with in terms of making decisions, informed decisions, once you understand how kind of the value of cards
Yes.
are, the value of those corners are. But yeah, I don't know. I only played a two-player game. I'm looking forward to trying it more. It worked really well at two.
Okay, so we play, and it's funny you say that. We played it at 3 and 4. So the first game, Dan King, I know he listens to the podcast. Hi, Dan, and people will know him as the Game Boy Geek. He taught us the first game, and that was a 3-player game. And the 3-player game seemed to be nice. Just be clear, everybody, this takes up a lot of space. This game, so because maybe it's the
It
size of the
does,
cards,
yeah.
the way the board spreads out, it does take up a bit of space, and it seemed I don't know, like, it wasn't as, I guess, intense. Like, I mean, yeah, you still had your moments, but it wasn't as intense. When you got to 4 players, it did take a little bit longer, but you were really also kind of battling it out in certain areas, and it almost turned semi co-op at one point. Because I had Robert and my other friend Mandy going, "Okay, well, this is how we can do this to block them." It's not a cooperative game, everybody. It is competitive, but the 4-player game turned out that way because you ended up getting a real separation of board. Like, you ended up
Hmm.
having
Hmm.
one side of the table really working on one side, and then the other two work on the other side. So there were like a lot of areas where you'd have people with the same colored cards grouped together, and it wasn't opening those areas to get a token out. So it was
Hmm.
really
Hmm.
interesting to see how the 4-player played with the three. I didn't mind it at 4. I know when I was talking to Dan, he said he preferred it at 3. I'm sure he'll review this at some point and give his thoughts there. But yeah, I liked it right away, but I'm curious how it's gonna play out in the long run for me. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So,
totally,
but
totally.
I
Yeah.
enjoyed it for what it was. I think it's beautiful. The tokens are gorgeous. And if I'm able to, I told Suzanne I had a very long week, so might not have as many lovely images this episode. But if I can squeeze one in there, I will. So that is Pollen. I liked it.
Excellent. Alrighty. Well, first up for me is Clue Treachery at Tudor Mansion. Now,
Ooh.
this is I guess an escape room style board game that my friends
Okay.
Josh and Melissa brought over for a game night recently.
Nice.
And honestly, I hadn't checked it out. I didn't really even know this series existed. So it was, but we, as a group, we tend to enjoy unlocks, exits, these puzzle type of games in general. So here we have one in the Clue universe, Treachery at Tudor Mansion. This is designed by George Feldichuk, David Rudo and Leo Taylor, with art credited to Henning Ludvigsen, and it's published by Hasbro. This is a
Ah,
mass market game,
sure.
shelves at Target, Walmart, Amazon, wherever, what you have it. And what I'll tell you is, from what I could tell, it's $16, or this specific title I found many places for $11, which is, I find, reasonably affordable, and it plays
Yeah,
up to
I would say
6.
so.
So what happens is you open it up and you have paper wrapped decks of cards.
Hmm.
You get a big sheet that's like, "Stop, read this first. Don't open anything else," right? And you get like some starting board tiles and a starting deck. You get characters to pick from that are the new Clue universe characters. So for example, you do have Mrs. Peacock and uh Colonel Mustard still, but
Hmm.
now there's Dr. Orchid,
Right.
and things like that. So they kind of swapped out and modernized the characters a little bit. So you all get to pick a character, and they all have a tiny little story you get to read. And then on the tiles, there are numbers like, 113, 112, whatever. So you pick a location, you get like a little cheap clue pawn that you just move there, and then you read the card.
Right.
Maybe the card has um, a hint or a clue or a story piece, or maybe it's part of a puzzle, and it will tell you you need 3 cards to complete this puzzle, kind of thing, and you only have one, and you keep on going, and it will tell you, okay, look at card 124 now, things like that. So you just take turns going to different locations, reading cards, discovering things. And I this will not do spoilers per se, so it's always interesting to talk about these puzzle room games without doing
Right.
spoilers. But ultimately, your gameplay area does expand, so you will unlock more rooms as you go. You will be solving puzzles, you will be getting clues, and ultimately, what you want to do is, at the end of the game, you want to be able to answer who killed Mr. Body, where they did it, and with what weapon. Oh, go figure, right? We played it in about an hour, and what I will say is that it was fairly easy, but we play a lot of these games, and it was very enjoyable. We had a great time.
That's
It
awesome.
had a few little moments of, "Oh, that's cool that they did that." It had a few puzzles where you were kind of figuring things out, moving
Right.
things around, and then you were getting these little clues, so there's a little bit of deduction in there as well. "Oh, is
Mm,
this character lying? Oh, this story corroborates that story, so maybe that's the truth," that kind
mhm.
of thing. Um, for an hour long, uh, 5 of us played an hour long for an 11 to $16 game, for a very pleasant, somewhat straightforward escape room game. Total blast. It was so much fun. We immediately looked online to see, are there more like this, because we
Right.
would want to play them. And there are 2 other ones that we'll likely pick up and play together as a group as well. What I will say is that if you are introducing friends, or you have a group of casual friends that aren't necessarily super into these games or haven't
Sure.
done one before,
Mhm.
I think Clue Treachery at Tudor Mansion is a great starter escape room board game,
Right.
and I had a blast. So definitely check that one out.
Okay, very nice. I like Clue. I mean, get a lot of people give
I
a lot
love
of
Clue.
hate to
As
some
a
of
as
these
a
older
classic
games.
board game, I love Clue.
Exactly. I mean, I like it, and I'd totally be willing to try it. I mean, and for the low price of 16-ish dollars, I think
Yeah.
it can survive if it's one that I end up not liking. So very good. And I realize in us. Oh, hold on, it's not my mouth here. Oh god, I think I was eating chocolate and like a piece of it got stuck in my teeth. Ew, gross. I'm sorry. I haven't had chocolate in so long, so it's just awkward. I digress. I forgot to put prices on the things, but that's okay. So I'm hoping Suzanne will be kind enough to potentially look up said prices of the games I've talked about while I talk about the other
Oh,
ones, and then we
sure,
can come
totally,
back to
no
them.
problem.
I can't do both things, Suzanne. I just can't. I'm
That's
sorry.
okay. You
I
talk about your
appreciate it.
game, I'll
All
try
right.
to help you out.
I appreciate it. See, that's what friends are for. Bonus points if you know
Teamwork,
who's
teamwork
saying
makes
that.
the dream work.
That is an old song. Okay. So the game I'm going to talk about next is a game that Suzanne had actually spoken about, the base game many moons ago, and that was Red Cathedral. And I'm going to be talking a little bit about Contractors, which is the expansion. And we'll probably revisit once Suzanne's had a chance to play it because we'd love to get her thoughts as well. So this is designed by Isra C. and Shay S. And art is by Chema Roman and Pedro Soto. And it's published by Devere. It's for 1 to 4 players in about 60 to 90 minutes. Do you want to jump in yet, Suze, or do we want to do that at the end?
At the end.
Okay, that sounds good.
You gotta give me a minute here.
Sorry. I'm rushing. Just a quick overview of the base game. It's a rondel type game. You're using dice that kind of get rolled and put in certain spots on the board, but at these spaces there are resources, and depending on how many dice are at each space will determine how many resources you'll be allocated. Obviously, choosing wisely on the dice you pick because the dice says 3, you're going to move it 3 spaces, and if it lands with other dice at that space, you're going to get more of those resources. You have your own board, which has little flags that you're going to take and put on this nice little structure you've built, the cathedral you're trying to build, and there's a base, there are some windows, and there's a top, and you are trying to acquire the resources in order to build those parts of the cathedral and also kind of decorate it with your pieces as well for additional points at the end of the game. So this is where those resources are going to come in handy. There are other little things that will help, give you some extra bonuses and things to get more points, but that's generally the gist of the game. So then we also have now the expansion, which I've played. Now, I did not play all of it. And when I say that, there
Oh,
are
there's
like
so much in it.
15 different contractors
Yeah.
or things that you can bring into the game. So I played a few of them to get a feel for the game. And there's a new board that gets introduced, and that's like where the contractors will go. And then there's kind of a scoring that happens with them, which somebody who played with us, I'm coming back to you, Dan, who was like not really seeing the payoff in that scoring, but we'll get there momentarily. It also introduces a black die. So you get another dice that in that rondel that you can use, but it works a little differently than the other dice because you now have a kind of an extra board that kind of gets slid onto your board. And this is where it's going to hold your contractors and the contracts that you need to acquire in order to get them out on this secondary board, which have some locations. And then each of these kind of location tiles are put on top of your cathedral, so that doesn't change. So each kind of part of the cathedral, and when one of those is finished, then you're like, ooh, I get to score some points, which is nice. Also, based on how many contractors you have on this new board, it acts as a multiplier for you. So it's not huge points, but it's extra points. And also landing on this contractor board allows you to get these tiles, which kind of give you some really cool bonuses when you use them. But if you have to bring a tile on your board and you haven't used it, that tile comes off, but it counts towards your set collection, which are also points. This is one of those games that's great. Doesn't matter what you do, you're getting some points somewhere. So some of the expansions we played with, the diamond one, which I believe acted as like a wild resource, so it gives you a bit more opportunity to gain that. There were the bricklayer ones, and this is just tiles. Again, they're all ways to just get more resources, but depending on the type of action you take would give you more resources with this bricklaying tile. We played with I'm trying to remember now. Now, of course, I don't know. I'm sorry, everybody. I am so tired. I am like forgetting things from my convention, but long story short, I played with a lot of the different cards. A lot of them will give you resources or opportunities, and I think that's what they're meant to do. Some came with tokens, like I was saying, like the bricklayer, which would allow you to do that. Some also potentially might give you more actions. It really just depends on what you want to do with the game. I don't know. Okay. I liked the expansions. I don't necessarily know if it's warranted. And when I say that, I love Red Cathedral. I think I played that. I think I taught that game several times when I was at this recent convention that I was at. And with the contractor expansion, we played it as well, but I still enjoyed it without. I think if you've played Red Cathedral a lot and you just wanted to, try it a different way or add a slightly different element, sure, you can try it. To be fair, I'm not a big fan of expansions unless it's amazing because I just don't get the plays and I need to require me to have an expansion. It's not a bad expansion. So let me start with that. It's not bad. I just don't know. I don't know how much I would actually play a ton with the expansion. It just adds a new card because that's what it is. It's one of the cards gets replaced from the base game, and you replace it with one of the new cards, which adds just a slight element of getting more resources or gaining more actions. And then
But
you've got
you
that
didn't
new
play
board.
with the extra board then, right?
Sorry, yes, and then in addition to the
Oh,
extra
okay.
board, but this is where we had some discussion with that extra board because the extra board is a way for you to get that set collection, so get those tiles of the set collection, and then scoring the cathedral. Because once you've completed a city, as in someone has completed that column of the city, and you can say, okay, we're going to score this, and you see how many of your contractors are in that city, and then you just multiply it by the amount of spaces that you control in that cathedral part of the cathedral. 6 points, for example. And it's not even like because there are two types of points, right? You got those ones that are like in between, and then you have those like big jumps. I'm sorry, I don't remember the names of the points, but on the board they have like the little ones in between, and then they have these like yellow markers a little
Right.
bit more spread
The
out.
prestige points or something like that. Yeah,
Possibly.
yeah, yeah.
I
Yep.
apologize. They don't even give you those. It just gives you the regular little baby points. So I'm just like, I can see the point of like it's negligible. It's like okay if I don't score it, well, you know what I mean. It's not that serious. You're not guaranteed to pull ahead that much. So all in all, that was very long winded to say it's not a bad expansion for me. I'm glad I got to try it and I have it. But if I hadn't been introduced to it, I would have been okay. So I'd be curious to know what Suzanne says. She might 100% disagree with me, and that's totally fine. But if you played Red Cathedral and you liked it, I don't think you would be, worse off for having it. I just thought for me, it was like, I don't necessarily know if it's something that I would need to play with all the time.
So I haven't played the production copy, but I've played this on like Tabletop Simulator,
Yes.
and so I look forward to playing it and circling back because I think I feel a little differently than you
No,
do
yeah,
on
and
it.
I
What I
guarantee you
do
do.
recall though is what well, first of all, and I was just thinking about this the other day looking at my game shelves and thinking about a couple of games that I really wish had expansions.
Yeah.
And then games I'm like, it's whole like, why do you want an expansion? Because similar to you, at this point, I'd rather mostly have a new game than expand a current one. And for
Right.
example, there's a game called Majesty
Mhm.
that came
Yep.
out a number of years
I
ago.
remember
And
that.
I don't know how well it did, but I haven't heard anything about it being expanded. And I really wish it would because I love Majesty. And I think another really big game came out at a similar time frame that kind of overshadowed it because they had some similar elements to it. But I really like Majesty and I wish it had an expansion. I don't know if I'll ever get one. But then I was
Right.
looking at another game, and I honestly can't remember what it was and how it like, if it had an expansion, I probably wouldn't care because the game feels so rich and full as
Mhm.
is. I don't
Right.
it's great. And I kind of feel that way about Red Cathedral in that it is such a great game and there is variability in the box that maybe it doesn't feel like it needs an expansion. That said, I think there's so much content in Contractors. I can
Sure.
see where one, I enjoyed a number of the modules that I tried back on TTS, but two, like I can see feeling like, this is enough. Like, this is
Yeah.
so much game here now. I mean, I wish them all the best, but
Absolutely.
I will make an effort to get all these modules played and then circle back, Mandy.
And you know what? Maybe by then I will have played them. So, but I wanted people to know I liked it. It wasn't a
Yeah,
bad expansion. For me, I was like, Red Cathedral on his own was quite good. But again, I am not an expansions person. So, someone who's like, now I need to like jazz it up a bit more, great. This
sure.
will 100% work for you. So, Red Cathedral with the Contractors expansion.
All right. I'm actually only going to talk about two games today. Similar things going on, man. Just been busy week and
Really,
whatever.
really
But
busy.
I am very excited to talk about this one because it's beer and bread. Now, I'm not a beer person, but oh, I do love me some bread. So here we go. Beer and Bread is a two-player only game, Mandy. So I'm not sure how,
Mm,
if this is going to get to your table, but you
yeah.
want to listen to what I'm saying here.
Okay. All right. All
So
right.
Beer and Bread is designed by Scott Alms, who is quite a prolific designer, behind the Tiny Epic series and things like that. But great designer. The illustrations are by Michael Menzel, and this is published by Deep Print and Pegasus Spiel
Oh, okay.
Games. And in the US, it retails for $35. So Beer and Bread, thematically, yes, the cards represent beer or they represent bread. And it is basically a resource management card game. We'll call it that. Cool. But it uses dun da 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 multi-use cards. One of my favorite things in board
What?
games. Exactly. So on each card, there are three sections, and those indicate what you could do with any given card. The top has resources on it that you can use to harvest and collect those resources. The bottom of the card has different special abilities. Sometimes it'll be end game scoring, sometimes it'll be a storage expansion, or if you collect wheat, always collect an extra wheat, things like that. There's a wide variety of special abilities on the bottom. And then in the center, this is where you're going to get points. And it's a beer card or a bread card. And it shows you what resources you need to trade in and the points that you will get for that card. So that's how you would score that card ultimately, typically. The game plays in 6 rounds. And I forget what they're called. It's like a harvest season and a dry season or something
Okay.
like that. And they're represented on the board with red and green. So you have a green season, a red season, a green season, red season. And basically, the green season, you seed all these resources out on the board. They're little wooden meeples. And then you play your cards. So you have a
Mhm.
hand of cards and you play however you want. Do you want to play this card for the resources? Do you want to play it for the ability? Your choice. But in the green round, you're drafting. So you get a hand of cards, you pick one to play, you got to give the opponent the rest of the cards and they get to pick one to play.
Oh.
So you're drafting back and forth. Cool. So you play out your cards however you want to. And then you get to keep the cards that you played as resource cards for harvesting.
Okay.
You keep those cards for the next round. And then you refill your hand to fill in any gaps.
Right.
Cool. Then you play the next round, you pick up those cards, you get a few new cards, and you basically play the game again. There's some new cards that get laid out. The resources get quote unquote refilled, but it's the off season essentially. So you get
Mm.
fewer resources. So the
Okay.
resources are limited every round. In the green round, there will be more available. In the red round, there will be fewer available to pick from, and you only have so much resource storage on your board. So, resource management and planning is actually a really big part of the game as well. So, you play through the red round, you go back to a green round. At the end of the red round, you discard all your cards. So, you
Okay.
don't carry over cards from the red rounds. You only carry them over from the green rounds to the red rounds. And after 3 pairs of rounds, green, red, green, red, green, red, game's over and you score the cards, the beer and the bread that you've managed to make, and any kind of special scoring cards at the bottom. And that's the game. It is one of the best games I played this year. Absolutely.
Wow.
100%. It is
Okay.
this and another game, Mandy, that I think you might be reviewing next episode.
Yes.
I've talked about before, but games that have a spark to
Yeah.
them, right? Beer and bread for me completely has that spark. Everything comes together so smoothly. All the little decisions that you make feel so tense and interesting and important. And like the idea that you are drafting back and forth in some rounds and keeping cards in some rounds, the resource management, the timing of things, because you can only have one beer and one bread card on your board at a time. So you need to time when those flush and
Yeah.
how you go about that. There's an element that
Cool.
if your resource storage is full and you get more resources, you actually have to give them to your opponent instead. Like all of these little things in a very smooth playing game,
Yeah.
I think it just creates a great, great experience. I love two-player games in general. I
Right.
find that they allow the designer to really tightly balance everything, and that's how Beer and Bread felt to me. It just felt like everything worked. Um, I mean, my biggest complaint is sometimes it's awkward tucking the cards underneath the board when you play
Sure.
it for the bottom. Like I really have I just love the game. Beer and Bread, a phenomenal, excellent multi-use card, two-player only game. I know other people have raved about it as well. I believe the hype. For me right now, this is definitely a top 10 of the year for me right now. So that's
Huh.
Beer and Bread.
Sounds really good. It's those two-player games
I know it's
rough
tough for
for
you.
me to get, but it does sound right up my alley, so I might have
Yeah.
to make an
Well,
exception.
come down and visit me, Mandy, and I'll
I
play it with
know,
you.
making it work. So, before we jump into the other game, and I meant to talk about it earlier, but Suzanne and I got to play the Elder Scrolls with Chip Theory Games, and there's a video out, and we're giving our first impressions. So I wanted to talk about this earlier, I just completely slipped my mind, but go check it out on Chip Theory on their site, and you can see Suzanne and I having a very animated conversation about the game. So if it's one you were interested in, I mean, I played Elder Scrolls. I don't know about you, Suzanne, but that was like my jam for a long time.
Totally.
So,
Yeah, I think it was an interesting thing to get your perspective as somebody who has played the game and me who
right.
really hasn't.
Yeah. So just thought I'd interject there. Check it out. Pretty fun. If I can put a little thingy here in the video, I will, but if not, that's where you can find it. All right. Well, back to my last game, and I gotta say, Devere's been yeah, exactly. Go back. Devere's been putting out some bangers lately, and because guess what, I'm gonna be talking about another
Just had to
Devere
get
game.
that banger in
I
there, didn't you,
know,
Mandy?
I know, and my mom's been saying it too. I'm like, has she been listening to me? Am I the problem? Am
Who's
I
the bad influence here?
It's obviously me. So the last game I'm going to talk about is Bamboo, and this retails for 40 wonderful US dollars. I'm sorry, Canadians. Suzanne looked up the prices for me. So Bamboo is 40 US dollars. And before I forget, Red Cathedral Contractor Expansion was 30 US dollars, and Pollen was 39 US dollars. Okay, so you can get a general idea. So Bamboo is designed by German P. Milan. Art is by Jonathan Cantero, and it's published by, well, Devere. Plays 2 to 4 players in about 90 to 110 minutes. This game also fits into one of those small boxes that we've seen from Red Cathedral. So that's similar size, but it's a lot of game. I didn't know this, but apparently it's part of Kamushi Saga, which contained Bitoku and Silk. I have not played Silk.
Oh, I didn't
Yeah,
realize
I didn't know
I
that either.
cool. I did not know that.
So that was something I saw when I was looking up some more information about the game. I played Butoku and I enjoyed it, but I have not played Silk. But I didn't know it was all part of kind of that same kind of saga. So in Bamboo, you take on like a family or a clan as they call it in the game, and one of the clans are pandas. No, it's so cute. And you're trying to grow bamboo, and you're supposed to, take the fruits of these labor to care for your family and gain happiness points. Yes, the points in this game are happiness points. Yay! It's very cute. So what ends up happening in the game is you have, and I kept getting this confused, there's incense and bamboo. I kept calling the wrong things the wrong name. So try my best to remember that. You have a player board, which will be putting kind of like your objective tiles, and then kind of a home area that you're trying to keep balanced. So you'll be putting kind of home tiles in there to meet the objectives. But you want to make sure the same amount that you have on one side is the same amount of you on the other side, or you'll be getting some negative points at the end of the game. And it's brutal. I think it's like -2 per offset point that you have on your board. That can add up fairly quickly. It happens over four. So the game happens over 4 years or 4 rounds, and then you kind of follow seasons during these rounds for the actions. So on a turn, you have your player board, set that up. Not much on it except for that one objective, and then on the board, you're going to have bamboo in the bottom right of the board, which are going to move up depending on where you decide to select. You'll have similar colored bamboo on your chart, and I think it's like red, blue, green, and purple are the colors that are there. And these are what's actually going to be your actions, because on these little bamboo sticks, there are little symbols for actions. Depending on the color you choose to pick, you'll then place your incense, because you have a set amount of incense sticks, in the house that matches the color of the bamboo you played. So hopefully that wasn't too much, so we repeat it quickly. The bamboo you take from your board, if I picked purple, I'm going to take my incense sticks and put those in the purple house on the main board because I picked purple bamboo. If I picked 2 bamboo, I'm putting 2 incense sticks. If I only had 1 bamboo and if I had 1 bamboo and if I had 2 bamboo and 1 incense stick, my gosh, I couldn't get it out there. I'd have to choose which action I was going to take, but I do play both bamboo because they get put into that lower part of the board I was telling you about, and they kind of go underneath and push up one at the top, and then whatever comes at the top, you're going to take that and put that on your board for future actions. So that's one thing. You also have to, and I didn't quite get the theming here. You need to, I'm assuming, feed the people that are coming into your house. So it's talking about the tiles that are on your board that we talked about balancing. You need to be able to feed each of the people that I guess are in those rooms. We're gonna go with that. And that can get expensive, but that's an action you can take in the game, gaining money, getting those tiles to put on your player board to fulfill those objectives. That's an action. Acquiring more objectives or completing objectives, that's also an action. That's literally the game. And then at the end of that round, you'll have these tiles. Remember how I told you you're putting incense in houses? Well, everybody's doing that. And whoever wins that house will get that tile, and that tile gives you a bonus that you can use in rounds during the game. But just remember, you may have to pay some kind of upkeep to play it again in a future round. There's also a set collection element with them because they have different symbols. So basically, every different named tile you have will work toward a set collection at the end of the game. So the end of the game ends, 4 rounds or years that they have, and then you're going to look at your set collection. You're going to take a look and see if you've balanced your board correctly. If not, you'll lose points there. Making sure you're feeding people, because if you don't feed people at the end of every round, you'll lose points for that as well. So yeah, and then there is an advanced side of the board where you actually are required to cover specific spaces on your player board or you lose points, which is very difficult. Woo, sorry, a little struggle to get some of those words out today, but I really liked Bamboo. I liked it a lot. It's one of those games that had very few actions, but it was really tricky trying to get that balance. And just this is just on the basic board. Nevertheless, the advanced board, oh my gosh, that advanced board was giving me stress. Because I'm like, I can't cover the spaces and balance all at the same time. But I like games that, for the most part, the rule set is fairly simple, but you're still kind of like, oh, but I need this tile to do this tile. But then I got to work my objectives together, because if I kind of work them together, then I can accomplish more of them, because the objectives are designated to specific sides of the board. So if you pick an objective that goes on your left side of the board, it has to be met on the left side of your board. And then you have ones in the middle that kind of go all over the board, and then ones on the right. So you really want to try and get those to work together, and at the same time don't get too many tiles, because then you need to get food to, feed the people that are in your house. And I like that. Those sort of kind of actions that you continually have to think of. It's doable. You just have to be smart about it. And I mean, the theming is super cute. It comes with, really, really nice components, and the setup of the board is really straightforward. So I won't go into too much more than that, but I really liked Bamboo. I know when we played with a couple of people, they were unsure at first. Then once we started getting, they're like, okay, I see where this is going. They thought it might be a little punishing. I don't think it was, in my opinion. Maybe because I've won this game quite a few times. I don't know. There's just something there. But I didn't think it was overly punishing, but the advanced side definitely could put it in that direction. But overall, the feedback was quite good. So Bamboo for me. Yay, Suzanne. And I hope you played soon so we can talk about it some more.
Awesome. Well, we were going to, but we decided to play Lacrimosa instead.
Oh, another
So
good, another
another
Devere
Devere game. So
game.
we'll get there. We'll get there. Well, thank you, Mandy.
Yeah.
I only had 2 games today, but that's okay because we are going back in time
Gotta go
for
back
our
in
game
time.
pie.
Back in time.
Okay.
All right. You want me to?
You want to keep
I'll
rolling or you
I'll
want to
throw
cut?
it out there. Because I'm the one who put the year, and this was a
Okay.
struggle. So yeah, we'll just keep going.
Okay.
Um, yeah, I'm just gonna roll right in. So, Game Pie was an interesting one this year. We're like, we're always looking forward. We're always looking at the new and the now and the hey, flashy, whoa, whoa, la. We said, no, we're gonna back in time. I was singing that earlier, back in time. And so we talked. I said, hey, why don't we look at a time when maybe around the time that we kind of got into the industry, or sorry, not the industry, but started playing games. And I think for me, it was like 1987. But 1987 is a really hard year for games for me to kind of pick out some good ones. So we compromised between, where Suze was and I was. So we compromised at 1991. So the year is 1991. What games did we play and enjoy in said year? And I don't know if you have anything to add, Suzanne, before I commence this list.
Well, no, I really didn't play. So I've played games all of my life,
Yeah,
whether it was mass market board games
sure.
as a kid, or really, I've talked about before, playing trick taking games with my
Hmm.
grandparents, like euchre and bridge.
Right.
But I didn't really discover the quote unquote board game hobby until 1994. So games, I wasn't really playing hobby games in 91, But looking back through the list of games in 91, there were definitely ones I was playing in 94 that came out in 91. So,
Right.
you
And
know.
yes, let's be clear. My list is 100% like mass market games.
And it's
100%.
interesting to look at the games that were coming out in, say, 1991 versus 2001, and
Right.
how much board games have changed in 30 years.
Oh yeah,
Spoiler alert,
a lot.
it's a lot. And for sure, about 8 years ago or so, 10 years ago, you're starting to hear people talk about the golden age of board games and things like that. And, I think
Yeah.
that's a debate for a different day. But what I think it is distinct when we go back and look at much older years, not 5 years ago,
Sure.
but 90s. Oh, it's just the number of games, right? You search up the games and you go to Board Game Geek and there's like 10 pages of results.
Yeah,
You go to 2020 and you're looking at 60 pages of
absolutely.
results, right? So
Absolutely.
lots of thought fodder there for sure. But yeah, Mandy, 1991,
Let's
please
kick it
bring us
off.
in.
Yeah, so mine's gonna be, yeah, as I was saying, mass market list. This girl right here. So first one on my list has goes by two names, but I knew it as Nightmare. But apparently, I don't know if there was a version that came out later, but potentially, I think also in Australia and other places, it was known as Atmosphere. Okay, so Nightmare is a board game that had a videotape, and you're thinking, oh, what's the big deal? At the time, this was cool. Okay, you had a videotape that was kind of controlling the game, and you had this guy on screen, and he was like talking like this, and he'd call you a maggot if you did something wrong in the game. And then as the game progressed, he would start to like get older because it was a race, right? It was a race against the timer and the host, the gatekeeper, if I recall. That's what he was called. And the name of the game was to collect 6 of your keys, and then you wanted to get to the center of the board before time ran out, and gosh only knows what he'd do to you. So if not, the gatekeeper would win the game. And that was it. And if you look at it now, like this is pretty tacky. Actually, if you look at like the game itself and stuff, but I mean it was with the times it worked out. Nightmare was actually one of my favorite games to play during this time period.
It's awesome. I don't think I've ever played
Oh, it's so I you know what? And it's not even scary. Like it's just funny now,
it.
but
Sure. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Well, for first up for me is actually one of the games I credit for pulling me into the world of hobby board games in 94, and
Right.
that is Quarto.
Oh, good game.
Quarto is a simple two-player abstract game with beautiful production, uh, with dark pieces and light pieces, and they're shaped like squares or circles. They can be tall or short, and they can have a little hole drilled in the top, so they're the hollow or solid. And it's just Connect Four, right?
Yeah.
Except, dun, 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 you get to pick the piece your opponent places, and it's Connect Four of any one attribute. So you can have four dark pieces in a row or four hollow pieces in a row, but it doesn't matter if they're short or tall or what shape they are. So there's a few more factors that you have to track while you're playing, and that, giving your opponent the piece is a lovely little twist on the play as well. I have played infinite amounts of Quarto. I have four different sets. Like I've got two different travel sets and the big
Nice.
set and all this. I love Quarto. It has, and I would recommend Quarto today. Quarto is a game that was apparently released in 91. Totally, totally stands up today and is still just as fabulous today. So Quarto is my first slice of 1991 pie.
Good choice. I still have mine, so very, very good choice. All right, well, next on my list is not just regular taboo, but celebrity taboo. I think we had a few versions of it, but this was one, and so be it. It was in 1991. I had some games in 91, and I'll never forget playing this game with my brother, who was the worst at it. So, like, my other brother, I would sit there and just buzz him, like, no, no, no. And I swear, I think we've, like, scarred him for life on taboo because he refuses to play it now. We were awful now that I think about it. It's taboo for those who don't know. You get into teams, you draw a card, and the clue giver tries to get their team to say the word that's on it without using related words that are on the card. And this was just a version that was themed for celebrities. I mean, I was like probably what 11 or so around the time, so I didn't know all the celebrities they were even talking about. But family time in our house was you were voluntold. So if you wanted to or not, you were playing games. So celebrity taboo, it was still fun. Maybe not for my brother, but for me.
It's awesome. My next slice of pie is actually Tichu, which should
Oh.
be some game that many gamers today are still familiar with. This is essentially a ladder climbing game with some twists in terms of having some special cards like the Phoenix and the Dragon and things like that. And basically, you I don't know what it is about Tichu,
Mhm.
Mandy, that really helps it hold up as you're playing in pairs and things like that. But uh, you work together. You have to kind of be smart about what you play and when you play, and leading your opponents in this and supporting your partner and things like that. It just really, really works. And again, you talk about games that were, whereas maybe you're kind of like, does Nightmare hold up? I don't know. Both Tichu, though, completely holds up
Sure,
to,
absolutely.
other games of the modern market as well. It's kind of a classic, basically, so that's why it's in my 1991 pie.
A couple things here. Tichu has been sitting on my shelf for years, and I've never played it.
It
Don't
can be a
don't at
little because
me.
of the player count and the idiosyncrasies of the rules, yeah.
Right. It just never got to the table, but it is one that I have and I'm open to playing. So if someone wants to teach me, I am here for it. Maybe Suze, you can teach me because you have it. Nightmare actually made a reappearance on Kickstarter. Actually, I almost backed it, and then I saw the price and
Oh,
went,
that's right.
I wanted it. I really did, but the price was just, and I'm not saying it was unreasonable. I just couldn't afford the shipping. It was a little rich for me. So, uh, maybe another time. But next on my phone, which is might be a nightmare for some, but it was just so cute and adorable for me, was Dream Phone. I, I played Mall Madness more, but Mall Madness, as to our surprise, came out in 1987 or 88, and Dream Phone would have been next on my list. And now that I'm like looking at it, I'm like, oh, it's something. One of these boys likes you, and you just have to find out who he is by calling his friends for clues. I mean, talking about it now as an adult, it's absolutely ridiculous. But when you're kids and you're being silly, you get a fun phone in a game, like that's cool. And then you get the voice if you're a secret admirer, like, oh my gosh, we're gonna get together. It's cute. So Dream Phone for me was a lot of fun, and I think it was just getting the girls together and being silly. Uh, you can't argue with a good time. So Dream Phone,
It's the perfect sleepover game,
it
absolutely.
really was like no lies were said there. And then Suzanne, I know you said you only had three, so this is my last one. Well, and staying in line with Dream Phone, there's Perfect Match. Oh my god. And again,
I'm sensing a theme here.
right? What can I say? The pink hearts and boxes really got me. And then, with friends, especially when you're just like, "Ooh, boys," and finding out, what special electronic messages they had for you. I mean, it was cute and it was fun. I didn't say it was good, but it was fun. So, Perfect Match. Yeah, that was another one, fun one. So I cannot be the only one with the list like this. So maybe on the the BGG Guild, if we get a chance to throw that up there, please chime in and save me, so I'm not the only
I
one out
I
here.
I love that. I would love for folks to chime in on this for sure. But I'll wrap up
Sure.
the 1991 game pie with my last slice, which again, I would play it. I would play it tonight if I had folks over. Clue, the Great Museum Caper, and it totally was just a coincidence that this game pie lined up with me playing a Clue themed escape room game this
Yeah,
episode as
it's
well. Go
perfect.
figure. But and I am a fan of the original Clue board
Right.
game. I played it a ton with my family. My poor parents. I made them play all the time. Um,
Did you ever play
Loved it as a
solo?
kid. I did not. I wasn't that creative as a kid. But Clue, the Great Museum Caper, has it's un, a little bit of deduction, but it's also a lot of hidden movement
Right.
as well, where you have a thief trying to steal paintings. You have this plastic board that kind of raises up, and you get plastic components like locks and things like that. And you're moving around trying to discover the thief. The thief is trying to. There are things like cameras and things like that. There are actions that the thief can take and actions that the detectives can take in order to win the game. It really actually holds up beautifully today. It's a lot of fun. And I can't believe it came out in 1991. So that is Clue the Great Museum Caper.
Okay, I don't actually think I played this one. Maybe I did.
I
I
I
don't
still
know.
I still I have a copy, Mandy, so we can
Is it all like my old games where all like the edges are white and like I
a little bit.
played my
It's seen
games.
some love, that's for
Yeah,
sure.
that's all right. I'm here for that.
But yes, this would be a great episode thread for you all to chime in on what games from 91 do you play or did you play? What games were you playing in 91? If you were alive in 1991, because,
Yeah, that's
let's
fair.
face it, people born in the year 2000 are 23 today. So,
Wow. Oh my gosh, I feel so
yep.
old.
You can always check out our guild. That's Board Game Geek Guild 3141, or you can search for Salt and Sass on the guild thread on the guild search on Board Game Geek. You can also email us saltandsassgames@gmail.com. Mandy, how else can people find us?
All the socials. Well, you could be watching us here, right on the YouTube at Salt and Sass Games, and we are also on the Twitch at Salt and Sass Games, and we are also on Twitter at Salt N Sass Games. Remember, there's no and; it's an N. Salt N Sass Games, and you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at 613Mandi. That's Mandi with an I.
And that beautiful eye. It's important. It matters.
Aye.
And you can find me on all the social media sites as at 425 Suzanne.
There you go.
As always, it is a pleasure and privilege to be part of your extended gaming family. Tell us about your older games, 91. I think, Mandy, we should do 94 next because that's the year
Yeah.
I discovered
Yeah.
board games, hobby games. So we'll see what comes up there. I know one of them already. Renegade is reprinting. So anyway,
Oh,
we'll go into I know,
okay.
and I'm
Yeah,
calling a
there's
game
one on my
you'll
list.
hate, Mandy.
Yeah, I know. There's a couple on there that I know for sure that are gonna make my list. Some will make you laugh, and some might even make you cry. So we'll see.
So tune in for that episode 18 in a couple of weeks. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. Until next episode, make sure you stay hydrated and play lots of games. We'll see you
Yes.
then.
Bye, everybody. Promotional consideration has been provided by game publishers in the form of review copies of games. This episode was sponsored by Druid City Games, where player experience comes first. Check out all of their great games at druidcitygames.com. If you'd like to support the podcast, please check us out on coffee.com/Salt and Sass Games. Thank you for your support. We are also a part of the Goonhammer Media Network. Check out more of their content on media.goonhammer.com. Salt and Sass is produced with love by Suzanne and Mandi, and we'll be back next episode with more salt, more sass, and more games.